Welcome to the Toronto Sports Rush channel here on the Bet Rivers Network. My name is Kyle Andrew. I am joined by channel contributor Pierre McGuire. Little post-game Leaf show coming your way, Pierre. We just watched a very strange hockey game.
Kyle, that was unbelievable. I know that the Leaf fans have been disappointed in the last two games because they lost them. One to Washington on home ice, the other one in Pittsburgh, where they were two. Pittsburgh was 2 for 5 on the power play. It was a big reason why they lost the game. The Toronto side tonight, you couldn't have predicted this. And I quite frankly, the star of the game, first, second, and third star has to be Anthony Stolarz. Kyle, he was phenomenal.
He helped them engineer a robbery without a doubt tonight, going back home to where he's from. That had to feel very good for him. If you're the Leafs fans right now, you got to feel pretty good about this guy heading into the playoffs, even though we're nowhere near there yet. They put an end to a streak of losses tonight that was only 2 games. And you said this with Julie on air yesterday. It's not time to panic, but would it have been time to panic had he not stole that game tonight?
No, but if they would have lost to Anaheim in their next game, because for
Yeah.
Anaheim it's 3 games and 4 nights all on the road, I would have panicked after that game. But after tonight, sometimes good teams just take a night off. This team took a good portion of tonight off, and their goalie, Anthony Stolarz, Kyle, bailed them out. And because of that, now they feel good about themselves. They're coming off the road. They're going to play a team that's playing their third game in 4 nights, probably get a little bit more momentum going into their game on the weekend in Detroit. I think this is kind of one of those games a team can really build off of.
Not only that, but it's also because their goalie, which is something that has not been stealing games for them in the past, they haven't had that guy who has been able to help them right the ship. And tonight, he pretty much solidified himself, excuse me, as the guy who can help them get back on track when they're not there.
I think that's a great point. And also, you can't look past Joseph Wall as well. I think Toronto, more than anything else, they've solidified their back end. Their coaching strategy is obviously really sound. I love the fact that tonight, when the coach sensed they were in trouble, he didn't waste any time when they were killing penalties. Auston Matthews, Mitchell Marner, you get over the boards, you're going to start every penalty kill. Not a lot of coaches would start star players. So I think there's a lot to it. Your point about the goaltending, though, is so spot on. It really is.
Well, the NHL now is pretty much driven by teams with that type of a 1-2 punch. It's been like that for years. The Leafs have always had the one or two twos. Now it seems as though they might have two ones on their hand ready to move forward.
I thought coming into the season that Anthony Stolarz, Cal, might have been one of the better steals as a player being signed away from the team. Comes as a Stanley Cup champion, a guy that's been kicked around a lot, knows the Ontario
Yeah.
marketplace because after playing at Nebraska Omaha, he went and played for the London Knights. So he's not intimidated by the Canadian marketplace or the theater at all that is Toronto. I got to give the guy a lot of credit. I got to give the Leafs management a lot of credit. That was a really good signing, and obviously he's performed so well here through the first 30 plus games for the Leafs.
That's a great point you made about him spending time in London. Even though it's only the OHL, it is the Toronto market equivalent of pressure because the London Knights are one of the great franchises of its kind in all of sports.
Yep. I agree. Look at Mitchell Marner. I mean, quite frankly, I'm not even sure if Mitchell Marner ends up being a Toronto Maple Leaf if it's not for the influence of the Hunter brothers. So I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot, and now we've got Easton Cowan coming as well into Toronto. So the London Knights play a significant role in what happens with the Toronto Maple Leafs right now, for sure.
So it was a weird game, but the Leafs really did kind of make they gave up a lot of power plays to one of the best power plays we've ever seen in NHL history up to now, and they actually did pretty well shorthanded. But what looking ahead to the Ducks, how do they feel in the locker room tonight? Are they lifted simply by Stolarz's performance alone? It was great for Matthews to score on his fifth attempt in alone tonight when it mattered. What's the energy in the locker room tonight? How do they, this has got to be huge for them.
I think it's gigantic, and I agree with you 100%. One of the big things is they lose on Friday at home. They lose Saturday on the road in Pittsburgh. They probably
Mm,
thought they deserved a better fate in Pittsburgh.
sure.
They probably had some bonding time in New York. I'm going to bet, just having been in the league a little while, they probably had a little bonding time as a group in New York on Sunday, practice yesterday, and then get out and play on Tuesday. I think when you have that kind of time, you get a little bit of a reward. Now you come home, you play Anaheim on Thursday. I think they feel really good about themselves. And hats off. I didn't see any whining or complaining or
No.
guys yelling at one another. They hung in there, and I think more than anything else, Anthony Stolarz elevated their spirit beyond belief.
And that's what a great goalie can do. It was their second time facing Sheldon Keefe now, and if you just look at the paper numbers, they were out coached. Maybe the stats would suggest that, but it was a more even game than the paperwork says. The shots on goal totals were a little bit alarming. At one point during the ESPN broadcast, they had said it had been over a decade since the Leafs only had 6 shots on goal through 2 periods. And then they came out and stole the game essentially. So, how do you feel about a game like that ending in the 3-on-3 format? It's does it feel more stolen as a fan, as an observer of the game, or is it just everyone's playing the same rules? It's fine. How do you feel
Everybody's
about it?
playing the same rules. I'd rather have it decided that way than in a shootout. And I'll tell you, you're talking to a guy that lost a lot of overtime games when I was coaching. And back then, Kyle, you didn't get a point for losing in overtime. So I kind of like the 3-on-3. And we saw some drama right off the opening faceoff. Jack Hughes comes screaming down Main Street. Stolarz makes a save. You come the other way, it's a 2-on-1. Matthews, to your point, misses a net. We had chances galore both ways. So I kind of liked it. I thought it was great for the fans watching on TV, and I'm sure it was great for the in arena experience as well.
We were talking with the producers just before we went live here, just before the overtime started, that 3-on-3 between the Leafs and the Devils. If you can't get into that, you just hate this game.
No,
I'm
I
not sure.
agree.
I'm not sure if you saw this stat during the game. The Devils were 15-0-0 going into the third period with leads this season until tonight. So
Yeah.
if you're in the Devils locker room now, to change the tone away from the Leafs for a moment, how do they feel? Because they've been up and down a little bit lately as well.
Well, their last game was a 4-0 loss on home ice to the Colorado Avalanche, and Colorado put the boots to them pretty well. Probably the best game Colorado's played all year, and that's one of the reasons why I think the Leafs saw an A effort from the New Jersey Devils. But here's the one thing I would say about New Jersey: they probably feel pretty good about themselves. They see what their speed quotient is. They see how good a player Jack Hughes is. They see how good a player Nico Hischier is. They see the goal that Andre Palat scored. That was a beautiful goal scored by Palat off a nifty
Mhm.
feet from Jesper Bratt. I mean, they got a lot going on there. They're a real good team. They're better now than I think a lot of the pundits thought they would be in the summertime.
With Max Domi being back in the lineup tonight, I was wondering if he would provide maybe a little bit of a spark. And while maybe not so much on the ice, it had to feel good for the boys to have him outside there, get the full lineup back closer to where it needs to be moving into the mid portion of the season. Were you expecting more of a spark for him, or do you think he just did his job, got his feet back under him again, and will move forward just fine?
Yeah, no, I think confidence is a big thing for a player like Max, and clearly he hadn't scored a goal yet this season.
Mhm.
What I liked about it is I saw him get engaged physically. I saw his speed being a factor, even though the Leafs weren't producing a lot of offense when he was out there. His speed was becoming a factor. I think that's good. It's hard, there's three different portions of an NHL season, Kyle. There's a season from the start to American Thanksgiving, then it's American Thanksgiving till just about the All Star break, and then it's from the All Star break right to the end. It's a sprint, so the tempo of the game changes. So for Max to come back, he's coming in at the probably the second quickest time before we get to the third quickest time. So it's pretty tough. It's a pretty tough adjustment. I thought he handled it well.
Yeah, and the Leafs have had a pretty busy schedule lately, even by
Mhm.
modern NHL standards. So that's been something for them to deal with as well. I want to ask you something based on your experience in all aspects of the game, but especially coaching. Going into the third period at the intermission, Leafs had put 6 shots on net. They were absolutely being dominated in every aspect of the game. What is the conversation in the locker room that Berube had with his team?
Well, I don't know what Craig would have said, but I know what Scotty Bowman would have said, or I know what I would have said because I learned at the foot of Bowman. Is that we've put ourselves in a position to get back in the game. Our goalies played his derriere off. You wouldn't say it like that, but you know what you would say.
Mhm.
And quite frankly, we got a chance to win this game. We're a shot away. Let's just tighten up. Let's start pushing the pace. Let's make them pay the last 20 minutes. We'll take advantage. And there was that save sequence by Stolarz when Toronto was killing a penalty, and all of a sudden Tanev dumps the puck out. It's a great foot race situation that's created. But what I love is, and when you watch the tape, you'll see what I'm talking about. Pontus Holmberg actually out muscles Dougie Hamilton at the point of attack to get to that free puck. That just shows how urgent the Leafs were. And he took advantage and he scored. And right after he scored, the whole game shifted for Toronto. It really did. Guys were more engaged and more wanting the puck.
Yeah, and as you were saying there too, to outmuscle Dougie Hamilton in that situation too, that's the kind of hockey Berube said that to everyone that he promised us that that's the hot type of hockey the Maple Leafs would play this year, and to see it playing out this way and seeing the plan being executed, it's nice and it's just wonderful if you're a Leafs fan to have a very minimal slide end the way it did tonight. What effect do you think it has on the team, the fan base, in the NHL at large for the Leafs to do this on the road tonight? Could they even have accomplished this in the pressure of their own building?
I think they might have been able to do it in their building, but what I think it says to the whole league is if you don't play an A game for 60 minutes against Toronto, chances are you're not going to win. So that puts a lot of pressure on people that have to play Toronto, whether they're playing them in their own rink or playing them in Toronto. All you have to do is watch the game from Pittsburgh on Saturday night. I know
Yeah.
they lose the game, but Toronto deserved probably a better fate if they would have been a little bit more disciplined when it came to taking penalties. People around the league see that. They know people are going to see what happened tonight and they're going to pay attention. This is probably, and I was talking to my real good friend Bob McKenzie today, the Canadian icon, and I was saying, Bobby, this might be the best Leafs team we've seen since the late Pat Quinn was running the team. And they lost a real tough series to Carolina that eventually led to Carolina going to the Stanley Cup final. That's a long time ago. That's a
And
real long
that's
time ago.
and that's that's a heck of a statement to make too, considering there are guys that aren't running at full flight right now,
Mhm.
and which basically points to the idea that this might be the most complete Leafs team from the crease on out that we've seen in since the Pat Quinn days.
Kyle, I love what you just said because Christopher Tanev was a signing, a free agent signing. You look at Oliver Ekman-Larsson, what he's brought. I know he came last year, but Simon Benoit, number two, he's one of those playoff style players. Jake McCabe, I know he came a couple years ago, but he's a refined defensive element, and he'll make a huge impact in the playoffs. But what you see is Ruby's attitude is kind of like what the players are taking on now. They're harder, they're tougher, they're meaner, they're more determined. I don't see Auston Matthews always lollygagging. I see him intense. I see him engaged. Mitchell Marner, same kind of stuff. Willie Nylander, same kind of stuff. Hey, they know who the boss is now. They know there's a new sheriff in town. They can't mess around anymore.
And maybe the fan base is going to learn soon that the 70 goal version of Matthews might not be the most valuable version of him for the team, right? The more complete version could be it.
You couldn't have said that any better, Kyle. And I'll tell you what, I have experience with that. Mario Lemieux. Mario Lemieux sacrificed points for us winning Stanley Cups. And he did it in 1991. He did it in 1992. And what an amazing privilege to have worked with him. But I would tell you that he internally sacrificed points. And I can tell you the same thing happened in Detroit with Stevie Eiserman. Scotty Bowman, after they got upset in 1994 by the San Jose Sharks, sat down with Stevie Eiserman and said, "Hey, we gotta have a meeting of the minds here." And he says, "You're gonna have to sacrifice offense for the well-being of the team." And he did it. And did see what happened. They go to the Stanley Cup final the next year. They lose to New Jersey, but then they win in 97, 98, 2002. It's just a juggernaut. And he's the guy that's leading the juggernaut.
Well, now you're just getting the Leafs fan base a little bit too excited, which is a very slippery slope in that media market. One last thing before we get going here tonight. Home game against the Ducks, road game against the Red Wings, home against Buffalo. Those are three very winnable hockey games. If you're the Leafs heading into those, what do you foresee? How do you predict that those next three games will go for them?
You take advantage of the Ducks by pushing the pace. They're a good young team. I think they'll probably be a little bit intimidated and fatigued by the theater. And so you don't look past them. You make sure you jump on them pretty quick. They're going to be coming in from Ottawa. They played a hard game last night in Montreal. They lost in a shootout, but they played well. I'll be watching their game tomorrow, and I'm sure the Leafs will against Ottawa. Then they come in and play you guys. They'll get a lot of rest. Going into Detroit, Detroit is what they are. They're a team that's looking for an identity right now. But the first thing you got to do is take advantage of Anaheim, take advantage of their fatigue and their youth. And if you do that, you're going to set yourself up for having a gigantic weekend at Detroit and then home against Buffalo.
Very well said, Pierre. We appreciate your time and your expertise. My name is Kyle Andrew. This has been a Maple Leafs postgame show after an let's just call it an insane Toronto Maple Leafs victory, a robbery in New Jersey we haven't seen since the time of the Sopranos. My name is Kyle Andrew. I was joined tonight by Pierre McGuire. Thank you very much for watching Toronto Sports Rush here on the Bet Rivers Network.